welcome back to an obscure tour at the edge of the internet. I'm your host, the Nameless Tour Guide, and today we will be going through the opening cinematic of Dark Souls, and then we'll be proceeding through the Undead Asylum. So I won't be speaking over the opening cinematic. I'll leave that to Felka, Goddess of Sin. The aspects of the opening cinematic that are important to the lore, I will be coming back and referring to later as the tour progresses. So I will now be quiet as we begin, and I'll see you when we've reached the Undead Asylum.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart their stone scales. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. Seath, the Scaleless, betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark sign.
Now just note the rat here. That is a symbol of Felka.
Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
Welcome to the Northern Undead Asylum, and welcome to Dark Souls. Now, to start the tour, I just want to highlight in this room that we've started the game in two aspects. The first, there is a door, and the door is locked. And this body that was dropped from this hole above into this cell holds the key, the dungeon cell key. Now that we've acquired the key, we can jump in here and we can observe it. We can read its item descriptions. This is what I was talking about in the last episode, about item descriptions. So if we hit X, we can see a little piece of text that's attached to this item. A mysterious knight, without saying a word, shoved a corpse down into the cell, and on its person was this key. Now, the next two questions are two very interesting questions to be asking right at the very beginning of the game. Who was this knight, and what was his purpose? The answers to these questions are actually quite important to the story of Dark Souls, and that's why it's one of the first questions that are posed to us in the game. But as the item description says, there may be no answers, but one must still forge ahead. And right now, there are no answers. There is just this cell. And so we will forge ahead. Now, what's happening in this hallway is a code. Much like the code of the hair colors, all of this tunnel is such a code that tells parts of the story of Dark Souls. We don't have all the information that we need to decipher this code. So instead, what I want to do is focus upon what we just saw in the opening cutscene, and just have a look in there. There is a hollow praying and crying over another dead hollow. So what did we just see in that opening cutscene? What I want to go over is just get everybody onto the same page of everything that happened in the first 3 ages of Lordran. And the opening cinematic that we just saw depicted two to three of those ages. Well, 3 of those ages. The first age was the Age of Ancients. In the Age of Ancients, the world was an empty void of nothing. Well, it wasn't nothing. It was an empty, barren field where there was no time. All there was stone crags and arch trees, and amongst those arch trees and those stone and those grey crags were everlasting dragons. The everlasting dragons were beings that existed without time, because there was none. They simply were. And then a fire broke out. A fire that becomes known as the First Flame. The First Flame brings energy to the world, and it is the source of that energy. And with that energy, it brings disparity, brings night and day, life and death, heat and cold, as Velka says as well, and of course, light and dark. And when that fire erupts, humanoid figures, like these two here, come forth from the darkness that is created by that flame. And those creatures find 4 souls. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, finds 1 soul. The Witch of Izalith finds another soul. And Nito, the Grave Lord, finds another. And then the furtive pygmy finds what is called the Dark Soul. Now with time and with these souls, which are a form of energy, Gwyn, the Witch of Izalith, and Nito take on the everlasting dragons that exist in this world. And with the help of the Scaleless dragon, Seath the Scaleless, they defeat the everlasting dragons and inherit the earth. So that is the Age of Ancients that we just saw. So when Gwyn inherits the earth and the other lords inherit the earth, they create a new civilization, and this in what is called the Age of Fire. And this is an age where humanoid creatures rule the earth. But and it's a great time. It's a very prosperous time for all. But then the first flame starts to fade. And with this fading of the first flame, energy starts to stop. And that means that the day-night cycle starts to become long and drawn out when creatures no longer die because they can't. It is the first flame that allows the cycle of life and death. When the first flame stops producing its energy, creatures start to become undead and become like this character here, and these characters over here. They become unable to die, and this starts becoming quite a torturous existence for these creatures because they finish their life purposes. They go on their missions, they go on their adventures, and then they finish them and they get to the end of what should be their natural life, and they still exist. Even after they've learned and acquired everything that they've desired in life, and they suddenly realize that there is no escape for them from this reality, from this world. And this causes them to go mad and causes them to become hollow. And that is a term that we'll be discussing later as well, as that is a very important concept, this idea of existence wearing down one's psyche to the point that you go insane because you can no longer die. Now, as the first flame starts to fade, an age starts called the Age of Dark. And this is where these creatures that are these smaller creatures decide that, much like Gwyn took on the everlasting dragons, that they would take on Gwyn, and that these creatures of the dark would inherit the earth, as they see themselves as different to Gwyn and the beings and the lords and the creatures that existed in the Age of Fire, even though they are actually the same race. So these creatures rebel and try to destroy the gods. But this rebellion is squashed. But this is enough to frighten Gwyn. He has a family at this point. He has people that he cares about, and he also cares deeply for the Age of Fire. He believes that the Age of Fire is the true state of the world, and so because of this, he heads off to the first flame and decides to sacrifice himself and to give over his powers to the first flame, to relight it and to restart a second Age of Fire. Now, if that happened, time in Lordran is a strange thing, so whether things happened thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, it's rather odd, and especially with the idea that once you start entering into an age of dark, time becomes longer, days become longer. It's very hard to decipher how long certain periods of time are. But if we're just going to describe it in terms of like epochs or ages, Gwyn doing that, linking the first flame, bringing it back to life, bringing life back to the world, bringing back the normal cycle of life and death and day and night, and making it once again an Age of Fire. That happened about 5 epochs ago, a very, very long time ago. And what the story of Dark Souls is the events that occurred between Gwyn linking the flame and defying the dark, and the time that we find ourselves in right now, where an undead has been chosen. So hopefully that all made sense. Just wanted to get everybody up to speed on where we are in the early era of Lordran, the first 3 ages, and we'll be discussing those. There's a bit more to that story, and we'll be discussing that as well on the tour, but that's just a good general overview of what the early ages of Lordran were like. And now, to continue the tour, I would just like to highlight the bonfire that is unlit at the moment, but we can light it. These bonfires serve as checkpoints in Dark Souls, so if I rest at a bonfire like this, if I were to die, I would be respawned at this point. And when you rest here, you regain all your health, which is the red bar at the top left-hand corner, and you also regain what are called Estus flasks that we will be receiving soon. And those serve as healing potions. And here is our first monster, and in traditional Dark Souls style, it is a very aggressive, very, very tough enemy. So, there we are, and we've escaped through this door before the demon was able to kill us. Here is another bonfire, and we'll light it and rest at it, so that if anything terrible happens, I can return there. Now I'll just be picking up my starting equipment that you saw me choose at the beginning of the game, when I chose to be a knight. And that was just the equipment screen. So we've done a loop around and we are back where we were. But let's go and have a look at this passageway, this doorway that was just opened. Just notice this here. I will be discussing this later, but just notice this wall for now. It is actually important. And here is the knight. This was the knight that dropped that body into the cell forest that allowed us to escape, and now he's thrown himself down into this pit, into a room that has no entrances or no exits until that ball made us a path, which is a rather odd act, but there is sense to it all. But right now we don't have any of the information that we need to understand why.
Oh, you're no hollow. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you?
So this knight has just referred to us as not being hollow, and just as a reminder, that was what I was talking about before, the wearing down of one's psyche by the constant existence of undeath to the point where you become animalistic. He's just saying that that has not yet happened to us.
Regrettably, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family, "Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the Undead Asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know." Well, now you know, and I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask, an undead favorite.
These are the Estus flasks that I was talking about earlier. These are healing potions that you regain when you rest at the bonfire.
Oh, and this. Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
It's just as I walk away, just listen to the sounds that play. This knight has just committed suicide. Now also just note with that knight that he was on a mission and he failed that mission and now he has committed suicide. It's a rather odd interaction for the very beginning of Dark Souls, of any game really. The first NPC we meet immediately says that they failed a mission and dies with no further information. But those, like I said in the cell, are core to the story of Dark Souls. Now, one thing I just want to point out here is notice this enemy here who is guarding that door over there. He is different and dressed differently and wields different equipment from these creatures back here, or the other creatures that we've fought around the Undead Asylum. And this is a lot of how you can decipher the story of Dark Souls. Now, we will be doing a lot of this during this tour, which is looking at enemy design and enemy placement to understand what is happening in the storyline. And this creature that was dressed differently is guarding this door, which is currently locked. And that hints towards the fact that what's locked behind here has a different meaning to what is happening with the rest of the story that's happening in the Undead Asylum. So we'll get into that story later. But right now we will be fighting the Asylum demon. Just as I fight the Asylum demon, just notice the character design. A lot of, as I just said, a lot of the story is actually held within the character's design, not just the monster design like this, but a lot of the character designs and the items that they wield. And the Asylum demon is no different. So just notice this there. Notice the colour. Notice the weapon. As the tour continues, you will be able to decipher what all of it means. So, just one thing that I did want to point out, you would have noticed during that fight that there were some times where I was able to swing my sword freely without care, and then suddenly I get staggered. This is the stamina system. You've probably seen this in other games as well. If you look at the top left-hand corner, there is a green bar, and as I act, the stamina goes down. And if I roll, if I get hit while I am holding my shield up, that will also deplete my stamina. And if I have no stamina and I get hit with my shield, I become staggered. And if I have no energy in my stamina bar, I cannot act. And heavier weapons use more stamina, lighter weapons use less stamina, and that forms the basic action gameplay loop of the game, and is actually relevant and associated with some of the lore of Lordran. So I just wanted to point out that right now. Okay, well, that is the Undead Asylum. We have defeated the Asylum demon, and we are now ready to head off on our pilgrimage. So I will call the episode there. We'll be returning to discuss other things about the Asylum, the Undead Asylum, later during the tour. But right now, we can leave it there. So today we've talked about the first 3 ages of Lordran, the Age of the Ancients, the first Age of Fire, and the first Age of Dark. It was a big lore dump. I hope that it all made sense. And then we've just come through and defeated the Asylum demon. So next time we will be heading through Firelink Shrine, and we'll be discussing some of the themes and issues and the motifs of Dark Souls. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.